I'm 26 female. My mom is 45 and dad is 46. It's going to be a long and harsh ride, but I'm okay to cuss, curses, because I very much deserve and numb to them after going through this much. Never in my life have I thought I'd be in this place. My life is a mess right now. I'm the only child of my parents. They met when they were as young as 16 and had me when my mom was 19 and dad 20. I was an unplanned pregnancy. My father is no less than man any woman would want to be with. He cooked, worked, did everything. Literally kissed the ground my mom walked on. I never thought of him being unreasonable or anything negative. He was a family man, but someone you'd love to be with. My mom is cool too. She was always there for me and helped me out however she can. My dad wanted to have more kids, but my mom didn't. Never told me why. So when I was 16, mom was 35 then. My dad had an accident and became bedridden for 7 months. Though we never had to worry about finances, I studied at a private school. We were not from states, but still it cost a lot where I'm from. There were bills, so mom got a job in the following months. She was in my dad's shoes. She did everything, and I too helped her out with chores sometimes. Here's the kicker. She met someone and became emotionally involved. One day, dad was bedridden for 5 months at that point, if I remember right. She came to my room and silently broke down crying after my dad dozed off. She told me she liked someone from work. She isn't attracted to my dad. This whole ordeal is too much for her. She has needs too. She showed me her text messages and told me about the guy. He was 26 at the time. They were flirting. I was young at the time. Seeing her break down broke my heart. I wasn't close to my dad as much as I was to my mom, because mom was the one to spend more time with me than my dad at the time. I know it sounds stupid, but I was a teenager then. I told her I understood and I'd cover for her. She began coming home later. We both told dad it was just her work. I never got involved until one day my mom told me she wanted to meet and discuss a very important topic. We went out and I met that guy for the first time. He was a creep. Shaggy clothes. Nothing like my dad. I don't even know why my mom chose this a-hole over my dad. We sat down at a fancy dinner place and my mom told me she was expecting a baby. I was like, what? They had the audacity to kiss right in front of me. I was pathetically disgusted by them. I told them, what did they plan? She told me she doesn't know. She wants to keep this baby, but she loves my dad too. It was an awkward time and we came home that night. We talked the night, and she said she wants to keep the baby. I, again, naively chose to keep my mouth shut. So after this, my mom drops the news to my dad that she's pregnant, and my dad is delighted, but visibly worried, as finances are still in the question. So in the next 2 months, he begins to do exercises and therapy, so he could go to work again, even after doctors said he still needs time. He joins work and put my mom into the stay-home mom position like before. Her affair was short-lived. When my brother was born, my dad didn't sign the birth certificate. He bought a set of paper but refused to tell me what is it. Mom was still in C-section and he never told me what happened. He refused to acknowledge my brother. When my mom was brought home, he told her he wants a divorce. It hit mom like a truck. She literally had a mental breakdown. She kept begging and crying hysterically. My dad was indifferent and told her he knows everything. He regrets ever having me because I'm an ungrateful and entitled selfish person, just like her. They had an argument when I was holding my brother. He called her W and that she couldn't keep her legs crossed and wants him to raise the child of infidelity. Mom kept crying and begging for forgiveness. He packed up his bags and left. They got divorced, which took 8 months to be finalized. I don't know how much details, but dad would pay spousal support for my mom and child support for me. Mom got the house, and besides this, everything was settled. He willingly gave away primary rights of me to my mom, even refused having weekends, just supervised visitation. He never once reached out to me. I reached out to him countless times throughout, during, and after divorce, but never once did he want to be involved in my life. When I turned 18, he called me once. I remember I was elated that day, but to my surprise, he was cold. He just told me he hopes I stay happy and that he forgives me for what I did, but can't forget he was betrayed by his own blood. He told me he disowns me. It hit me hard, harder than I ever hoped. I remember I fell on the ground and cried. I called my mom names and that she ruined our family. I even cussed my brother that he's a constant reminder of what she did, and I can't ever have a father again. After divorce, Mom never really dated anyone. She got into depression and got into a crappy but decent paying job. Rented out one of the rooms in the house to make ends. She still celebrated her wedding anniversary, cries sometimes. My brother often asks about his father, but I don't have an answer except for we don't have one. It's been 9 years since the divorce. Mom never really moved on. She occasionally hooks up, but never thought of settled down. She thinks working a $60K a year job and getting rents from a single room is enough to make ends for the rest of our lives. My dad, on the other hand, got his life together, started a business, remarried, and has a son. I often scroll his profile. He never accepted my friend follow request and ignores my texts. But what I've learned is he's living a great life. I know I don't deserve to say it. I am much to blame as much as my mom for destroying our lives and my brother's life, but I miss my dad. I miss him a lot. I miss the times we had as a family. I went through heartbreaks, graduation. I was in an accident and I didn't have my dad beside me. It feels like my insides are screaming. I tried to meet him, but when he found out I wanted to meet him, he moved to another city. I had a son last year. He looks so much like my dad. I want to name him after my dad, and I want him to meet him. I'll be getting married by the end of this year, and I want nothing more than my dad to walk me down the aisle. I ducked up. I want him to scream at me, tell me I don't deserve to be his daughter. I want him to be angry, but I want him in my life. I want my dad. All these years, and not a single day goes by I don't miss him. I've sent long emails explaining and apologizing, but no response. I met him once, November 2020. I walked up to him and said hi. He was with his son and wife. He looked up straight in my eyes and replied, "Who am I?" When I told him I was his daughter with tears in my eyes, he said he doesn't have one and walked away. I was with my fiance. He handled me. My dad is by no means a bad person. He did everything any normal person in his shoes would. I know I don't have the right to apologize or even ask him for anything. But for once, I want him to acknowledge me. I just want him to acknowledge me for a single day, which is on my wedding, and I want him to look me in the eye and tell me I'm his daughter. Your mother has a screw loose. What in the duck was she thinking? Talking to her underage child about her life with another man, showing texts, and trying to get you to cover for her? She should have never tried to recruit you or put you in the middle of that. I just want him to acknowledge me for a single day, which is on my wedding, and I want him to look me in the eye and tell me I'm his daughter. He won't. From the sounds of it, this is something that he's going to take to his grave. And if I were you, I think you'd be better off no longer trying, because it's just hurting you. There may come a point, of course, when he does come to make contact, but that has to be on his own terms. And at that point, you have to decide what you want to do about it. To be honest, I don't think you can make it right. You were young, but you knew what happened, and you even met him. Like, really. It was honestly hard to read the whole thing. You chose a side back then, even participated in it by lying to your father and covering for your mother. So this is an issue that has reached a head, and I am just so lost about what I thought I knew about my in-laws, and my wife to an extent. My sister-in-law is a bit of an introvert who hasn't had much success dating. She was in a long-term relationship for about 3 years, but her ex broke it off, and she still hasn't found anyone since. This was about 4 years ago. She's gone on some dates over the years, but nothing seems to work out, and this has been frustrating for her. A couple weeks ago, she found a guy on Tinder, and they went out on a date to a restaurant. She said the date went okay, and I don't know all the details, but apparently, this guy has money. He owns his own business. He picked her up in a BMW, and they went to a really fancy place for their first date. Personal aside, this all seems very odd to me from a match on Tinder. So my wife, 29 female, was asking more about the date, and I got the impression she wasn't physically attracted to him. My sister-in-law likes tall guys, and he isn't very tall, and he's a little overweight. She showed us his Instagram, and he's an alright looking dude, but I could tell she was kinda meh on his physical appearance overall. Last week, they go on another date. My wife and I were at my mother-in-law's, 52 female, house when she got back. She lives at home and tells us how the date went. Again, they go to a pretty fancy restaurant, and apparently it was a carbon copy of their prior date, which seems weird. I'm not 100% sure what that means. I guess they had the same conversations? These were her words, and she was obviously less enthused by this last date. My wife asks if she's going to see him again, and she said maybe. I ask if she sees a future with him, and she says maybe. But since he has money, she wants to try and make it work. I was shocked by this answer, and I was even more shocked that my wife or mother-in-law didn't say anything to her about this kind of attitude. I said, "Sister-in-law, that's not nice. If you're not attracted to him, you shouldn't just use him for fancy dinners." This didn't start an argument exactly, but she didn't appreciate my comment, and it kind of soured the evening, so we left shortly after. My wife and I got into it when we got home, and she told me I should mind my own business. I said it's ducked up that she's only interested in seeing him more because he has money. If she had that kind of attitude about me when we first started dating, we may have not ended up together. She said I was making a lot of assumptions about her intentions. But how can I be making assumptions when it came right out of her mouth? This went on and on for a bit, and this is still a lingering issue between us. I feel like I've become slightly red-pilled or something, because the more I stew on this, the more it's pissing me off, and I'm really contemplating reaching out to him about this. I don't know him like that, and I am aware this might be a bit excessive, but if I was in his situation, I would be very grateful if somebody with inside information let me know. I'm not sure if I should do this. So let me just get this straight. You think you need to warn a rich, successful guy who is just okay looking that a good-looking, mid to late 20s woman is interested in him because of his money and lifestyle. How stupid do you think he is? Would you think about telling a woman that a man is only interested in her because of her looks? Why do you assume that this poor innocent rich dude is naively flaunting his wealth and in need of you to come rescue him from a shameless gold digger after 2 Tinder dates? He was smart enough to get some money, and now he is doing what he wants with it, which includes using it as a means to advance social capital. Picking her up in a flashy car, taking her to a very high-end restaurant, deliberately flashing his wealth on the first dates. Is his using that feature about himself as a means of making himself more attractive? If he wanted your sister-in-law not to care about it, he wouldn't have done those things or made her aware of his wealth so early on. I read an interview with the founder of Seeking Arrangement once, where he basically said, "I am not a great-looking guy, and I know I don't have a lot to offer women, but I am loaded, and that lets me get with women that are otherwise way out of my league. It's mutually beneficial." It is super weird and creepy of you to assume that your sister-in-law is taking advantage of this dude, and not that he is an adult who is fully aware of the situation that he is in. Keep out of it. Update. To start off, I did not reach out to the guy. Thinking about it more, I can't assume he is a fool, so he must be aware of what he is doing. Furthermore, the headache that would have followed suit if I had reached out is just not worth it. Everything beyond this point, I heard secondhand from my wife. I have not spoken to my mother-in-law or sister-in-law about this information since the incident. I have come to find out that my mother-in-law did agree with what I said to my sister-in-law, but she knew that if she made a comment about it, that my sister-in-law would have gotten very upset. My mother-in-law told my wife she was actually going to talk about it more with my sister-in-law after my wife and I left that night. But since I made my comment, she felt like it was hard to bring it up again without looking like by we, I mean my mother-in-law and I, were ganging up on her. My wife also told me that she doesn't think my sister-in-law should keep seeing him either, if she's really only interested because he has money. Apparently, my wife didn't like the way I expressed my opinion, and was just happy that sister-in-law was putting herself out there again. The fact my wife didn't tell me this the night we argued about it, and was making up a bunch of other BS, is another frustrating situation. But I don't want to get too far off topic here. The reason this came up again is because my sister-in-law and this guy went on another date this past Friday. There's a group chat with me, my sister-in-law, mother-in-law, and my wife, and the three of them have their own group chat. My sister-in-law talked about it on their group chat, so I'm assuming she's still annoyed at me. So he takes her out to dinner again, and this time, apparently he's being super flirty. Some context here. My sister-in-law is not a great conversationalist, so I think what's happening here is he's complimenting her. She's just saying thanks, and the convo stops there. This is relative for the next part. Her hand was on the table, and the guy put his hand on hers, which she pulled back and took her hand off the table. This was referred to as him being too handsy in the chat. He apologized and she said it was fine. I don't think she told him why she reacted like that. The rest of the date went normal, I suppose, after that. And when he dropped her off home, he didn't get out of the car and walk her to the front door. He just said bye and left. He had walked her to the front door the first 2 times. The next day, he texted her and apologized again for being too forward with her. She didn't respond, and she told my wife and mother-in-law that she's not going to see him anymore. My wife is of the belief she's just upset right now, and she might change her mind in a couple of days. So, this saga has seemingly reached its end. I'm all but certain I'm secretly being blamed for this because I opened my mouth, which is whatever. I'm not a mind reader, so I had no way of knowing how my wife and mother-in-law felt at the time we all heard her logic for continuing the relationship. I am very aware she is super sensitive and does not take any form of detraction or criticism well. But there are some subjects people need to hear straight up, and I believe this is one of them.